Alright, so I wanted to talk a bit about the state of charging with the Tesla right now, because we just did our huge, massive road trip to Acadia National Park up in Maine. We had to stop a bunch of times for charging there, and I am just starting to plan another road trip down to Shenendoah National Park for us to do some camping a little bit later in the year. And from all of that, I've noticed that things are changing in the world of charging. Some of it is Tesla itself, and some of it is just the massive growth of EV adoption in the country and how that is affecting charging overall. So stick with me and we'll get into it. Alright, so I haven't noticed it as much on the in the Northeast as you see reported out in California especially, but we definitely do have more and more demand at chargers, and they're getting more and more crowded. I haven't personally encountered a situation with lines in quite a while, but you know, we've also been driving kind of to a little bit more remote places, and we're a little bit off season right now, so that probably explains some of it. But there is definitely an uptick in the number of cars that you see at supercharging stations. On our recent trip, out of the 4 stops that we made at, or 5 stops that we made at chargers, the chargers were at least 80% capacity at 3 of them, and around 50% at the other ones. So it's not like the early days when you'd be the only one at these chargers. And so that makes a huge difference on the older V2 ones where, you know, theoretically the maximum is 150 kilowatts, but when it's full or even more than 50% and you're more likely to end up having to share power with others, it cuts it down to 73 kilowatts, which can really increase the amount of time that it takes to charge and makes things much less convenient and ideal. Luckily, we're seeing more and more of the V3 250 chargers now, but it does mean some advanced planning is required to make sure that you hit those ones rather than the 150s on your drive. And another thing that I noticed on our drive was that the etiquette at chargers has really not been so great lately. I don't know if this is something that I'm noticing more just because there's more people around, if it is something that's changing as more and more people get into Tesla and EVs and just haven't really figured out the, not even the rules, but best practices. But I've seen that a lot of people are doing full charges all the way to 100% and then like leaving the car too, even when the chargers are crowded. And because of the way that EVs charge, when you're going above like 80%, which, you know, I get, like a lot of times you actually do need to get to your next stop on a road trip, but you actually charge way slower then, because it takes, it's harder to put, you know, as much energy into the battery pack at that state of charge. So the charging speeds slow down quite a bit, so you're actually taking much longer to go those last 20% or so than you would any other point in the charging curve. And so that means that you're taking more time there, and you're basically blocking out a charger for other people who could be more optimally using that time there. So I think, you know, this is probably an education thing for people. They just don't realize that that is what's happening, and they're not thinking about the effect on other people. But I would like to see, you know, either some like messaging or perhaps like change in the fee structure to get people to stop doing that. And you know, along with the fee structure, I've also noticed that the costs of charging for Tesla's network seems to have gone up, you know, pretty holistically, at least across like the Northeast, you know, since the earlier days of supercharging. So we were seeing an average of around 40 cents per kilowatt hour, which isn't that bad, but that was sort of offset by a couple of cheaper ones that were like in the 30s. But a lot of them were up around 44 cents a kilowatt hour, which you know, is starting to push it a little bit. You know, it's still way cheaper than gas, and even going from like almost dead to almost 100% was still only like $30–35. But you know, it is interesting that the prices are increasing, especially as demand has been increasing, and the rumors of Tesla opening up the charging network continue to increase. So I don't know if the pricing thing is just coincidental, if it is, you know, increase in demand and then trying to, you know, sort of counterbalance that, and or you know, if it's them sort of like starting to figure out the right structure and get people prepared for them opening up the charging network to others when presumably they'd be charging more, to balance, you know, a huge influx of demand. But definitely something that we noticed and played an economic effect. And then the other thing that we've also noticed with etiquette is that, you know, there are a lot of people that seem to be using the supercharging network for their daily charging. And like, I get why, you know, that needs to be done. There are lots of people that, you know, want to get into EVs, which is great. And they, you know, don't necessarily have a solution for charging at home, whether it's because they live in an apartment or, you know, rent or any other reasons. But I think, you know, probably more than anything else, this is exposing the poor state of level 2 charging that we've got around here. Level 2 charging, which, you know, is slower and generally, you know, better for the health of the batteries in the car, is a much better solution for the daily charging. And really, we should be trying to utilize the level 3 or, you know, DC fast charging, the supercharging, for road trips when it's totally necessary. And keeping those chargers available for the people that need it for that, rather than being taken up by daily charging. But the reason that people can't do that is just there aren't enough level 2 chargers publicly available right now, not in enough convenient places, and so you know, that kind of forces them to use the supercharging network, which is not great. I also really noticed that I feel like, especially up in New England, like in Vermont, when we've been there in the past, you know, Maine too, that there were more and more level 2 chargers going in public spots, like, you know, both in towns, at hiking trails, as well as, you know, a lot of businesses. And it feels like that installation rate has really slowed down a lot, which is strange to me because a lot of states, including New Jersey, are, you know, have recently signed bills that provide funding and increase incentives to build out more and more public chargers, but you're just not really seeing them in the places that they need to be. So I'm glad that the New Jersey one at least specifically incentivizes building out level 2 charging in residences and like housing communities. But, you know, it's still going to take a while to get there, and it'll be kind of a slow rollout of that. And so I think we're going to continue to face the pain of people using superchargers for daily charging until, you know, more and more of that build out happens. So, you know, we'd love to see more businesses take the, I guess, cost of building out charging, because it definitely does make a difference in when I'm picking places for us to go on trips. We're much more likely to go stop somewhere where I know that we can actually pick up some free charging, or even, you know, discounted charging, because we're going to be spending money at the business. It pays off because we're much more likely to go to those businesses and patronize them than others. So I hope you know, more and more places see that and start to build stuff out as a result. All right, I'm here with wardrobe change and location change number 3 of the day. In case it's not obvious, I'm doing these on my drives for pickup and drop off at daycare. But yeah, I'm in the Buick now, or Enclave, and it's super exciting because we got an email that it was going to get an over-the-air software upgrade, which I am pretty sure it is not capable of. And I looked at the details in the email, and none of the features that they claimed were actually coming to it. So just interesting to compare to Tesla, where you get you know, weekly updates that actually add noticeable improvements, versus this, where I think this is the first time in 4 years we have even been notified that there was going to be an upgrade, and I'm pretty sure we're not actually getting it. But I will say, getting back in here, it was weird having to turn the car on and hearing the sound of a combustion engine, but I really appreciate having CarPlay in here. So anyway, back to supercharging. So one other piece of, I wouldn't say so much etiquette, but I think, you know, something that a lot of people who are new to Tesla and EVs overall haven't really realized or figured out yet, because there's just like no way to be educated on it, is that like how to most effectively use the chargers. And so, you know, that means both, you know, kind of hitting chargers between like 20 and 80% state of charge, where you're going to get the best charging rates, but also like how to most optimally utilize the chargers that are there. And so for V3 chargers, this doesn't really matter very much, but for V2 ones, it definitely does. So I've noticed that a lot of people just don't seem to understand that the power is shared between the cabinets at, or the stalls I should say, at the superchargers. And so if you are at a V2 one, which you'll know because it shows as a 150 watt one on the map, and also the cables are thicker, and the last way to know is that you'll see the stalls are marked 1A and B, 2A and B, etc., rather than ABC or ABCD or even beyond that. And so basically the way it works is that on those chargers, the power is shared between the charging stalls that are the same number. So 2A and 2B are shared. And that means that if cars are at both of them, you're going to get half the charging speed on those. Yeah, and so I totally get why people don't know about that, because it's not really publicized anywhere, and it's not even something that's like all that obvious, if you're experiencing it. Because it's not like the car tells you that it's sharing, it just shows that you're getting a slower rate, and you might be wondering why it takes so long to charge the car. So, I do think that as the EV industry grows and more people are getting into electric cars, whether Tesla or not, education is a big part of the missing part of that right now. And it's just, it's all of the little things like this that make a meaningful difference that I think are important to be teaching people about, because otherwise you're going to have a suboptimal experience and people are going to, not want to adopt EVs. They're going to hear bad things from their friends, and it's just going to slow the adoption down, which will not be good for anything. So, hopefully some of that will help, and hopefully these videos can help with that too. Yeah, the other cool thing that we've noticed lately is that it does seem like, Tesla's really done a great job with the build out, and there are more and more of the V3 stations that, go faster and don't have power sharing, but there are just more stations in general, which is great. We had no problem finding any in our trip, and as I'm starting to plan our upcoming road trip, there are so many of them that, now I have a bunch of different choices to make. Now I have a bunch of different choices to make about, which one is best based off of proximity to our route, in other words, which one is going to add the most time to like detour to, versus charging speed, versus the, restaurants and other amenities at the stop. And so it's, really great to have that. And, it really opens up the options for you and makes it so much more convenient and easy to go without a plan. She did, yeah. And a big part of that is also that, there are more and more that are coming at right along highways at, rest stops and service areas, which is really convenient too, because a lot of times you'd be stopping there anyway. And, it's also much more convenient to make the stops to charge there than it is to, be pulling way off the highway and like driving into towns. So that's great to see, and I really appreciate the states that seem to be making such an effort to do that. Notice Connecticut had a lot of them, both at like their big kind of, service areas where there's restaurants and stuff, as well as even the smaller kind of pull-off ones that are just for like rest areas. Even they had, superchargers and other EV chargers, which is awesome. I just wish some of the other states like New Jersey would do a better job with those. Although I do see them, along some of the more popular corridors, but and it's not like there's a shortage of them. It's just would be great to have even more convenient ones. Yeah, and then other interesting stuff that's changing right now is just the opening up of these networks. So, Tesla does have such a head start on everybody else and such a huge advantage in terms of infrastructure. There's just way more superchargers than there are, other DC fast charging networks around the country, and especially on the routes that you want to be on. But it looks like they are very likely going to be opening them up to non-Teslas soon, which will be a big change. And I think a lot of Tesla owners are not super happy about, because the supercharging network exclusivity was a big factor in a lot of people, myself included, decisions to go with Tesla over other EVs. And you know, with demand already increasing and having more and more wait times and having to share power and stuff, just with the prevalence of Teslas now, it's only going to get worse if they open it up to everybody else. So a lot of people are worried about that. You know, I'm actually kind of okay with it. First of all, I'm not, you know, using the superchargers all that much anyway. But second of all, you know, I think that there are a number of things that they're going to do that will help keep the supply versus demand balanced. Some of that's going to be cost. Some of it's just going to be convenience factor. And, you know, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see like a very different rate for non-Teslas versus Teslas at the chargers, as well as more like dynamic pricing to help reduce wait times. So, you know, I think that can also help enforce some better habits with people with charging, because right now it's just so easy to use the superchargers all of the time, and the costs are so low that it really incentivizes people to kind of overuse them. And, you know, whether it's economic or, you know, other incentives, it can do a better job of keeping people to use them only when they truly need it. Yeah, and then last but not least, I think one of the really interesting things right now is that Tesla has actually launched their own CCS to car adapter. So CCS is the main, I guess, competing charging standard that is available in pretty much every EV that's not a Tesla. You know, from Rivian to Ford to all of the Hyundai and Kia models to GM, they all use CCS. Electrify America, EVgo, ChargePoint, all of them use CCS. And so, you know, in the past, you were basically confined to either the Tesla charging network for people that own Teslas, or these other charging networks for people that don't. And there's going to be more and more cross-pollination now, both of non-Teslas going to Tesla chargers with those networks opening up, and now Tesla's also being able to use CCS through this adapter. And what's really cool about it is not only does it just, you know, add more optionality, but it actually seems like some of the charging rates people are getting at CCS stations can actually be higher than the Tesla ones, because some of those stations have much higher amperage. So you know, it can actually be a great way to not only not have to wait at Tesla chargers, but even get faster charging rates by going to the others. So that's pretty cool, and I definitely want to try that out soon. And I think, you know, that'll also kind of help balance out across all of these different networks. So it's an interesting time right now in terms of charging, supercharging especially. With all of these changes coming, I think things are going to look very different in another year or two from now than they do right now. And we might either be looking back fondly at this time as being the most optimal time for having a Tesla, or might be looking at it as, you know, an interesting sort of transition time on the path to much bigger and better things. Hopefully it's that latter, and I'm excited to see that. So with that, I hope this was, you know, of interest, and that you found this useful. Trying to share as much information as possible for people that might be brand new to Tesla, or coming over from other EVs, or even, you know, people that have had Teslas for a while but haven't utilized the supercharging network as much. So I think it's always a good idea to stay up to date on how things are changing there, and kind of do these like state of the industry reports. So with that, if you did find this interesting, please do give the video a like, as it helps other people find it and helps me grow the channel. If you haven't subscribed already, please do, so that you don't miss any upcoming content. We've got another big road trip coming up, but also have a bunch more accessories and even other comparisons with other EVs that I'm going to be doing pretty soon. So you don't want to miss any of that. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.